The meeting of the Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Bosley.
Present.
It doesn't,
Alderman Vaquero.
present.
Alderman Coe. Present. Alderman Carter. Alderman Coulter. Alderman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Green.
Present.
Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
We have 7 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have before us today Board Bill 69. We heard it last week. There were changes that have been made, and so we're back today to listen to that and to consider any other amendments. Would the sponsor please come forward and review what the changes are in the present committee sub?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Public Safety Committee. Just to give a really brief summary of where we are, we know that poverty is a major issue in our city. As of 2013, 33% of St. Louisans lived at or below poverty level. Poverty disproportionately affects children, people of color, and single mothers like myself. Payday lending and predatory lending are a very serious contributing factor to poverty. We know that 12 million Americans use payday loans annually, and the interest rate that we charge here in Missouri at 75% on a 2-week loan translates to a 1,950% annual APR. This is incredibly high. The profit margins in these businesses is exceptional. So what we're trying to do here today, a lot of states have tough restrictions on payday lending. In fact, 15 states ban them entirely. Other municipalities have banned them entirely. St. Anne in Missouri, for example, has banned them entirely. We're not looking to outright ban them. We do recognize that there is a need for quick cash. But what we are trying to do is strengthen the zoning restrictions that we currently have on the books. We're requiring that lenders post information that is easy to understand about fees and fines, including an equivalent APR, so that the consumer can make an educated decision on the loan, and a referral to alternatives, and so that we can get the word out about lenders that are doing so in a less predatory fashion. The changes that we've made from last week, what we did, we heard Paul Woodruff of the Prosperity Connection, which is a nonprofit that does offer lower interest rate loans. And so we heard that the legislation would affect their business model. And so we included an exemption for nonprofits in the committee substitute. So you can find that, I believe, on page 8 of the committee substitute, wherein it says this classification does not include nonprofit organizations exempt from taxes under section 5013C of the IRS code, and does not include organizations certified as community development financial institutions by the U.S. Treasury.
So that's page 8, beginning line 5?
I believe that's correct, yes. I also have 2 amendments before us that I'd like to introduce. They're very small amendments to explicitly exclude pawnbrokers. It was our intention to exclude these. We do regulate them already in the city. Further regulation would and should be handled by a separate bill. So I have an amendment to make that a little more explicit. And then one of the questions that has come up since the hearing is whether or not this legislation affects the license collector's ability to and need to collect a business license on these businesses. And it absolutely does not. In fact, the way that the code reads is that this is in addition to any fees or permits, licenses issued by the City of St. Louis. But I'd like to introduce an amendment that requires that any revoking of the permit would then trigger communication immediately with the license collector's office, so that those 2 offices can be in sync.
Okay. So in the committee sub, though, the only change in this committee sub is on page 8, line 5, at
Yeah,
this point. Mhm.
that's correct.
Okay. There's,
Let me see where Davis is back there.
page 13.
I got the original. That's the original.
But the new,
Yeah, see,
But see, they
that's
took
the issue. Yeah, so it's changed, yeah, so you gotta find out where we're on.
Where did it go?
I don't know the difference between the two, you have to look at the red line version.
Oh, I forgot that that was not part of the last.
Hello, Doc.
So, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we had decided before last meeting, but it was not part of last week's committee substitute, to remove some of the provisions related to signage. And so it's my mistake that is new to this committee sub.
And what-
So that would be page 27, starting at page 26 at the bottom, line 20. So that part of the good neighbor plan, you know,
Okay.
we kind of, these signage restrictions came directly from Kansas City's ordinance. They have been in place in Missouri, but it was our feeling to ensure that we, you know, didn't overly restrict signage to remain constitutional or what, you know, what have you. So we've removed some of those signage provisions.
So that would begin
Line 20,
line 20
line 20 of page 26,
of page 26.
and then going through line 14 of page 27.
So those are the two changes in the committee sub for Board Bill 69.
Yes. And I want to assure the committee, we'll hear from members of the public, but that, you know, no?
We're not hearing from members of the public today.
Oh, okay, we have a sign-up sheet here today.
That was our purpose for last meeting. Today, we'll be entertaining amendments and the rest of that.
Okay. So so then in that case, I would like to assure the committee that, you know, we did hear from Paul Woodruff of the Prosperity Connection last week. The question at that time, or, you know, the concern, at that time was that their business would be excluded. We have worked through that, and we have ensured that the exemption for nonprofits is something that will be accommodating to organizations like Prosperity Connection.
So those are the two changes, page 8, line, what is that? 5, and then on page 26, line 20. Those are the only changes in the committee sub from last week.
If we're not,
Right.
oh, sorry, excuse me.
Now, are there any questions from members of the committee on the committee sub so far? We do have amendments, but on the committee sub. If not, we would need to
I
entertain.
move that we adopt committee substitute for Board Bill 69.
second.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt committee substitute for Board Bill 69. Any discussion on the motion? If not, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bosley,
He's talking.
Alderman Vaquero,
Aye.
Alderman COHN,
Aye.
Alderman Carter,
Aye.
Alderman Kocher,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Green, Chairman Kennedy,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Okay.
We have 8 ayes and 0 noes.
Now we have several amendments. Before you should be amendment number 1. That's labeled amendment number 1. We will take that one first. You are speaking on amendment number 1?
Sure, yes. So amendment number 1, let's see. Amendment number 1, what this does is it explicitly excludes licensed pawnbrokers. It was not our intent, as I mentioned previously, to additionally regulate pawnbrokers. We do that already in the city. If we are going to add regulation to pawnbrokers, that should be handled in a separate piece of legislation. So this is just to make that a little more explicit. So we'll be just amending page 8, line 10, where we're currently excluding nonprofits to also exclude licensed pawnbrokers.
Any questions on amendment number 1, members of the committee? Okay, if there are no,
Move that we adopt amendment number 1 to Board Bill 69.
been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment number 1, request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing none, by your vote, we've adopted amendment number 1 to committee substitute for Board Bill 69. So there should be in front of us amendment number 2.
Right,
Handwritten too.
there's a change on that.
There's a change?
Well, yeah, mark that, if you would. Amendment number 2 is going to read page 30. It changed in the committee sub from the original bill.
Okay.
So if everybody can just change theirs to page 31, still line 5,
Okay.
and after the word code. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to,
No problem.
if everybody could change that.
Just after the word,
After the word code, short-term lender code, and then we're going to insert, so.
Were you going to explain the
Yeah,
amendment?
I can, I didn't know if you were ready for me. So anyway, so it's going to be amendment number 2, it would be page 31, line 5, beginning after the word code. We should insert the following words: once the permit is issued or revoked, notification shall be given immediately to the license collector's office. And they would like that put in there so that they're aware of what's going on.
I see the license collector is here.
Right.
Maybe she can come just give us briefly why she feels this is necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do want to apologize. We did not have the committee substitute, and so that's why the page numbers and line numbers have to be changed. I apologize for that. But the reason why it's important is just like, I'll give you the example of the newly enacted law regarding the wharf vending districts. If we don't know that the permits are revoked, and especially in these brick and mortar places, our sign is still up that they're licensed to do business, and so they can carry on. But once we know that their permit has been revoked, then we also start the revocation of the license process as well.
And this will take care of that?
Yes, sir.
This language. Okay. Questions? No, go right ahead. You have,
I'll go after.
go right ahead, Alderman Cohen.
I'm just curious, Ms. Thompson, is this not standard procedure within the city that once a revocation hearing has happened, either through the Board of Public Service or through the zoning administration, that your office wouldn't receive notification?
It hasn't been standard procedure, sir. We've had plenty of instances that we can give you examples, et cetera, that we weren't notified and the business still carried on as usual.
I'm only asking because as alderman, I know that we receive a copy of a letter from the Board of Public Service that states that, you know, a revocation hearing has taken place of the, you know, revocation of the permit and all that. And so your office does not get a copy
No,
of
sir, we
those?
have not.
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
I had the same question because I thought that
And it's the same with the hearings, hearings that the, has with the Department of Revenue, with Greg Daly's office, with the Collector of Revenue. Once they go to court and issue something, then we're not notified, and so again, we don't know because we have that license still out there. So just better communication is all that we're trying to add to the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. We can,
I move that we adopt amendment number 2 to Board Bill 69, committee substitute.
it's been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment number 2. There's been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing none, by your vote, we've adopted amendment number 2. I believe there was an amendment number 3 that I was told about. The fee. We don't have.
this was handed to us by council. The top end, it was lower than 10,000.
Sponsor.
Yeah, I think we need a sponsor for that. So, it was delivered to us, but I think they need a, you know, they do need an alderman sponsor. Also, we're
This is to,
lower the fee from 10,000 to 1,000.
Are we able, underneath the city charter, to have a fee that's greater than $500?
So, you know, I really need to give you the answer that I give routinely, which is public meeting really is not the place for me to give a legal opinion. I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline right now, everybody.
Can we take a short recess?
we can, but let's take 5 minutes.
I should,
Can I be involved in that too?
you can, I need to be clear that I'm not talking to a forum.
Right.
I will stay here.
We'll take 5 minutes to get the information that was requested from you. Okay, our meeting is ready to resume. We now have amendment number 3 in front of us. That would change the 10,000 to 5. It's indicated on the amendment. I know I had some concerns with the 10,000 amount. And so this puts us before it, at least to have a discussion to see where we'd like to go as a committee on it. The sponsor, I know you wanted the 10. Is this something you could live with?
I would ask that, the idea is to make sure that we have the funds available to hire somebody within the building division to administer, to make sure that we're following the rules and regulations that we're putting forth. I think, as I've mentioned, the payday lending industry has an estimated almost $9 million in revenue in the city of St. Louis alone. This revenue that they're generating comes from very low-income families, and it's going directly from our poorer neighborhoods out of the city, out of the state, and the $10,000 is quite frankly a drop in the bucket, but I do want to make sure that we are pulling in enough money to administer the policy correctly. I want to also draw our attention to a state statute that explicitly states that no village in the state of Missouri shall impose a license tax in excess of $10,000 per license. This state statute clearly implies that we have the authority to issue permits up to $10,000. And so, that state statute is an important one because it, clearly lays the groundwork for a permit of up to $10,000. And I think the argument that this would be too high for one of the most lucrative predatory businesses in the state of Missouri is an unfortunate argument. I would be able to live with it, but it is my desire to see the permit fee stay at $10,000.
I'm sure it is, right. Let's see where we are on it. The 10,000 just seemed a little arbitrary to me, and wasn't clearly defined where you got the number from.
If you want, I can share the state statute.
I'm familiar with it.
Okay.
Thank you. There's no other questions, we'll try to take
Can I
them
make a comment?
Sure.
quickly? And so, I support the bill, I support $10,000, but I don't think that we should be collecting $10,000 to pay for a position to regulate this. I think that money should be going somewhere positive, just in terms of, we should see something positive out of this and not 2 extra positions in the building or division. So I don't know, what the next plans are, but, I don't want us to take this money from them and then we just hire a new person and that's it. So, that was just more so of a comment, I'm sorry,
Fair comment.
not a question.
I do want to say, and I'm going to support the bill, whatever, but I do know, and I guess I probably wouldn't mind if their attorney came up, but he had made it clear as we were coming in that, you know, that they felt this would end up in court. And my thing is, I'd like to see this passed. You know, I think what you're doing is a good thing. I understand it. But if we do this and it's just all, you know, once it's signed, goes over to court, we've done a lot of work for nothing. And I just don't know, sometimes we're not better off getting something going, and then we could always amend it later in life, than to get something that's just going to get hung up. But it's up to the chairman. I wouldn't mind hearing from if they're taking public testimony.
Say it again.
Oh, I wouldn't mind hearing, you know, Dave's obviously the attorney, you know, for, I guess, the payday loan people.
You
Like
would
I
like
said-
for him to make some comments?
Well, I'd like to, I would at least like to get his opinion, you know, I mean, I think what he had told me earlier was anything really more than 1,000 was going to end up in court. I'm just curious, and like I said, I'll support it at whatever, so it doesn't matter, but I just wouldn't mind, you know, I just don't want to see this where we just go through a lot of work only to end up having it basically, you know, held up in court.
We can have him come up and say.
You know,
say
and again,
based
I'll
upon your
support,
question.
you know, and I'll support it at whatever amount, so.
And so that you're clear, my concern is not about it ending up in court or not, because they said the very same thing about the Civilian Review Board is going to end up in court. And so if we make our decisions based upon that, there's a lot of things we wouldn't do, because everybody claims to take us to court, or to take the city to court if we make certain moves. So that is not my concern. Mine more so is about what appeared to be not to be clarity about the 10,000. It seemed a little arbitrary to me.
There's been no demonstration, other than these made-up jobs. There's been no hard facts on what this money's going to be spent for, as a permit. Now, when we start talking about doling the money out to different folks, that's clearly a tax and goes into general revenue. And as the testimony has been said here, and people are willing to do that, people have publicly said, well, we might give it to the Healthy Home Fund, we might do this, then it's a tax. So call it a tax and do it as such. It's not a permit anymore. And if it is a tax, it's the word that hasn't come up at all, which everyone is well aware of, is the Hancock Amendment. And we don't have the authority to put this tax on. You're calling it a permit. It looks like a tax. It is a tax when you start talking about where you're going to put the funds. Kansas City is $1,000. It's been upheld. I think clearly when you're talking about one inspector at 56 stores, which was testified last meeting, $56,000, that can fill that position absolutely. When you're talking 5,000 at 56, $250,000 for an inspector, or are we going to use it for something else? That's where it's black and white. There's no gray there, in my opinion. You've got it. You can't. If you want to start talking about using the money that way, then call it what it is, which is a tax, which you do not have the authority from Missouri to do.
Question.
So when Kansas City, when they did theirs, they didn't.
2007, so it's been a
They
while.
didn't say what they would allocate the money? They didn't mention that?
I don't have any legislative history to that. I know, and again, I know I've been told that it's been litigated, and I haven't seen that, but I'm sure it has in the federal court, and it's been upheld, and as it should be, in my opinion, because I think that's a workable number. The fact that you're just picking a number at an industry because they make too much money and you don't like what they do, as Alderman French talked about with convenient packaged liquor stores or other things like that, where does it stop?
Yeah.
And I realize the interest rates and all of that, and I realize that's not in your purview. With the Good Neighbor Guide, there's no calls for service for these business. There just aren't. I talked to the attorney for problem properties. They're not on the radar. So to go after this industry, I just find disingenuous on the other side because you don't like the one thing you can't control. And that's my problem or concern with that, as well as the legal issues with the Hancock and as that goes.
Mr. Chairman.
You have a comment?
I do. So the argument that Mr. Sweeney is making, it doesn't apply here. We basically are treating this like a tax. We're putting it before the voters of the city of St. Louis. That is what Board Bill number 70 does do. I mean, in some, we are looking at, we are addressing the Hancock issue specifically by putting it before the voters of the city of St. Louis.
So you just said it is a tax. Why
Well,
isn't it called a tax? You just said it is a
I
tax.
said we
You're
are
treating it like a tax.
we are handling we are addressing the issue that you brought up. And to say that there are 0 calls to service for these businesses is also incorrect. That is just not true.
Do you have that information?
Do you have that information, Mr. Sweeney?
Okay, I'm going to stop this portion of it.
I did speak with
stop
Matt
this
Moak,
portion.
who said they're not even on the
They
radar.
have 0 calls for service?
They're not on the radar.
Excuse me, I'm not going to allow that.
I think
portion.
that's a disingenuous statement.
By who?
I think I just said
Oh,
I
I'm
would
sorry.
like this portion to stop.
I apologize.
So that means end it, please. Would you explain a little bit further the portions that you talked about on Hancock?
Certainly. So, this is a tax. A tax has to go before the voters, but it also has to get approval from Jefferson City to allow us to go after that tax. Now, by calling it a permit, which if that is in the fact what it is, you then have to justify those costs are going towards the cost to do the permitting process, to do the management, to do the supervision, to go through that process. So if that's the case, and if you can justify that, the analogy I used last time is the trash, the refuse fee. So again, that didn't even go to the ballot. We were able to, it's $11 a month. We were able to, the refuse department was able to demonstrate the actual costs was well clear of $11. They erred on the side of underestimating rather than over, because you can't make extra money, because that's where it becomes a tax, and that's where it goes into the general revenue. And you can do whatever you want with it there.
You're saying you can't make extra money beyond what
The
the
actual
cost
cost
is
is.
to provide that service or
By
whatever.
the service or the permit, correct,
And so if you go beyond that, then you're really talking about a tax,
in my opinion.
in your opinion? Okay. Did that complete what you wanted to hear from?
Just, like I said, whatever it's at, I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make sure, because I just don't want to go through a lot of work and then end up having this not get anywhere. I think it's a good bill. I think it needs to go somewhere. It was just, it's just wanted to get an opinion, that's all.
Okay. Thank you.
May I?
Alderman Cohn, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. So Dave, I apologize, I wasn't able to be at the last meeting. The number of stores that would be impacted by this, you said was 56.
With a caveat there, but there was an issue Alderwoman Spencer mentioned that it might be actually 30. Is that correct? Or that some are, the number of stores, is it 56 or, there's some that are like double, so it might actually be a 30 number?
There are 56, I think,
Like retail locations?
that are registered. Some of them are two, a payday lender and an installment lender in the same address.
So would they pay twice then, because they would be two different industries?
They are one business, so
So
they
if
need
it's
one
one
permit.
business,
It's
one
one,
permit.
right. Now, they might register as 2 separate types of lenders with the state of Missouri, but they're one business.
They
They
would-
have one business license.
So it would be based off of the number of business licenses. Do we know how many business licenses there are in the city of St. Louis for these types of businesses?
I asked that of the license collector, and we did not get, she did not have that data.
Okay.
Okay. Does that answer?
Unfortunately,
good.
yes.
Right.
So,
I don't believe we have any other questions for you.
No,
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, we brought this before our city councilor, to weigh in on whether or not this was a legal thing for us to do. And our city councilor, who represents the best interests of the citizens of St. Louis and not the best interests of the payday lenders like Mr. Sweeney does, our city councilor was under the opinion, representing our citizens, that this was a legal permitting amount. And that we, by putting it before the voters of the city of St. Louis, are going about this in an appropriate manner that falls within our purview as a city to do.
Did they say, why put it before the voters?
Because it is a new permit.
They didn't make any reference as it being akin to a tax, the city council.
I would have to revisit that conversation, but again, our city councilor does acknowledge that it could be litigated, and it has been litigated in Kansas City. Without having the staffing in place, we don't know exactly how much it's going to cost to administer. So there is that question, but by putting it before the voters and letting the voters decide, that is how we are making sure we are within the law.
And the 10,000 amount was determined how?
Again, we wanted to make sure that we had an amount of revenue generated that would allow us to hire somebody. And then I can point to that state statute, which kind of outlines what the maximum amount for a permit in the state of Missouri would be. And that is prohibiting permits above $10,000.
So were you trying to reach the maximum, or were you trying to raise a particular amount of money? What was your gauge to determine the 10,000?
It was bifold. So we wanted to make sure that we could have a functioning system in place. And so therefore, we went to the maximum amount that we could charge,
Okay.
that we felt we could charge, recognizing the huge amount of revenue and understanding that this would not have, in our opinion, a negative impact on their ability to do business in the city.
The adoption of Amendment 3. So I would move that we adopt Amendment 3 to committee, or Board Bill 69 committee substitute.
Second, previous row.
Been moved and seconded.
I have
to
an
adopt
objection to previous roll.
There's an objection to previous roll. Any discussion on the motion?
It's not in front of us.
It is. It was passed out.
Where's it? I didn't, let's see. where's it?
It's been
It hasn't made it,
Chris is hoarding.
it hasn't made it down.
Alderman
to
from
me
the
yet.
27th. is-
I don't even know what the amounts are.
It's changing it from 10 to 5.
Okay, I have it in front of me now.
Okay. Been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment number 3. There was a request for previous roll. There was objection to previous roll. No discussion on the motion. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bosley?
No.
Alderman Vaccaro?
Aye.
Alderman Cohn?
Aye.
Alderman Carter?
Aye.
Alderman Coder?
Aye.
Alderman Spencer?
Nope.
Alderman Green?
No.
Chairman Kennedy?
Aye.
We have 5 ayes and 3 noes.
By your vote, we've adopted amendment number 3 to committee substitute number 69. Was there? Okay. Are there any other amendments to 69, committee sub? If not, we can entertain a motion.
I move that we pass Board Bill 69 committee substitute as amended out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
There's been a motion,
Previous row.
been moved and seconded to adopt committee substitute to Board Bill 69. Been a request for previous roll. Is there, you don't want to be opposed to this? I would object too. There was a request for previous roll. We object to previous roll.
Yeah, thanks.
You object.
I object.
Okay, then.
Yes.
There's an objection. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Bosley?
No.
Alderman Vaccaro?
Aye.
Alderman Cohn?
Aye.
Alderman Carter? Aye. Alderman Coder?
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer?
Aye.
Alderwoman Green?
Aye.
Chairman Kennedy?
Aye.
Are there any changes to votes?
You just know.
We have 7 ayes and 1 no.
By your vote, we have adopted committee substitute for Board Bill number 69 with a due pass recommendation. That completes our agenda for today.
We do have Board Bill 70, which is
Oh, yes.
That's right, we do. Pardon me. Is that on our bill?
To what?
Board Bill 70, we do have Board Bill 70. Then there's some language changes that need to happen in 70, doesn't it? Here you go. We're going to take up Board Bill 70. That's the one that places it on the ballot.
Okay.
But you got to make some changes to it.
Yeah, there has to be one amendment change. You got it?
Well, what's this amendment?
Yeah, that's what we're doing now.
Oh.
This is not,
Oh, because we just changed
oh, this got, so, okay, that's right. And I saw
Doesn't
the,
have any specifics on it,
I saw the
page
one.
line.
Does it?
It doesn't.
And then we'll also need to change the 5.
We should probably have the page number and line number on there. as
We
a
do.
reference point.
We don't
we'll
have the
also
page and
need
line number. You want to pass them back, we can put them on there.
500.
We'll get this right one of these
This
days.
is not a perfect system. This is 3. What is the line number? I can put some on some.
We also have to change the 5,000 to 2,500 as well.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more than just this.
There's a lot of variables. This is doing a good job. It's so unforgiving. You know, each year, falls on the same weekend we're having our June. So I was at the Juneteenth.
I figured that was the case.
Which some I co-sponsor, some of them I can't. I co-sponsor 3. It was.
Probably just be a minute.
Oh, okay.
Forgive me and thank you for pointing that out.
I just read what's in front of me. Or try to.
They're still cooking. I guess it's just,
I cannot make, which I let her know, I can't make tomorrow's meeting. Because they cut the funding off for feeding the senior citizens the Meals on Wheels for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or whatever it is.
Okay.
So I made a commitment to deal with them at 11 o'clock tomorrow. I'm actually, I'm giving them a pizza party, so Friday note. And I can be here to make a call, but I gotta pick up the food. Only about 15, 20 minutes. I don't care if you ban everybody from that room, it doesn't bother me, but even for a while, I can stay up quarter after, because I have to be there around 30, because they put a flyer on it, so it's not real flexible. So, if you need me for quorum, I'll do that, but I really should change the date, but it don't matter, and we got plenty of time.
I do a lot of.
I had been hoping, I had one too.
It's just impossible, and I've never missed a meeting, but I can't, I mean, all these people are counting on me.
Right,
For me,
sometimes you're just double booked, there's nothing you can do if
I've
you're,
never in 7 years, here and 3 years at the airport, never missed a meeting.
it's insane.
Because
How
of
do you
the-
do this? 'Cause
Well, because this is my, I don't do any other job. During the day? Well, during the day.
and so, like, I always weigh it,
Yeah, I just,
what are they talking about at the business meeting? Is this something I have to be there for versus what are we doing?
I try to, yeah, but yeah, I'm just like, you know, I see that, but other than if you make a form, if they're smart, they could take a vote for people in front of them, and then they'll have a previous roll thing. You know, I don't think she's gonna take a vote anyway, I think she's gonna play with it for 2 hours. Basically wore out.
Okay, I believe we're ready to reconvene. We have a committee sub for 7?
Yeah, it was brought up last week, but it wasn't adopted.
This is just Board Bill 70. Do you have Board Bill 70? This is Bill 69. It might have got lost. I'll grab it from here. Yeah, no, that's just,
Here you go, sir.
okay, thank you. No problem. Okay, we have a committee sub for Board Bill 70. This is the same committee sub we had last week?
Correct.
Okay. We can entertain a motion then for committee sub for Board Bill 70.
That we adopt Board Bill 70 committee substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt a committee substitute for Board Bill 70. A discussion on the motion. Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Previous role?
Request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing none by your vote, we have adopted committee substitute for Board Bill 70. Now we have an amendment for Board Bill 70. We all have a copy of it that's been corrected. This would reflect the changes that were made in Committee Sub 69. Okay. We can take a motion then for amendment number 1.
Just for clarity purposes, so amendment number 1 would be changing page number 3, the proposition S, line 18 and line 19, and striking that from an annual fee of $10,000 to an annual fee of $5,000, and then the establishment for the establishment or a $2,500 for permitted use within less 6 months of remaining in the calendar year. So that's the change in amendment number 1. I move that we adopt amendment number 1 to Board Bill 70 committee substitute.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment number 1, committee substitute for Board Bill 70. Been request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll?
This Freeman voted no on the last one. Does he want to?
We get, he's fine.
Okay.
So I can hear no objection.
Then hearing no objection, we have adopted committee substitute. Amendment number 1 for committee substitute Board Bill 70. Now we need a motion on
I move that we pass Board Bill 70 committee substitute as amended with a due pass recommendation.
It's been a request for previous roll. Is there any opposition to previous roll? Seeing none by your vote, we have adopted committee substitute for Board Bill 70 with a due pass recommendation. You with us? Okay then. Then that completes our agenda for today. We do have a evening committee meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. 6 p.m.
6.
related to Alderman Boyd's bills. Okay? With that, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Because he's got this bill